Okay, so you're starting a podcast on the Bhagavad Gita. Wow, diving into one of the most influential texts in history. That's quite an undertaking.
It is.
But before you jump into the verses themselves, let's take a step back. Consider what makes the Gita so unique, why it's resonated across cultures for centuries.
Yeah, what's really fascinating is that the Bhagavad Gita, well, it's not your typical religious text. It's not, a list of commandments. It's not a creation myth or anything.
Right.
It's actually a dialogue, a conversation
Yeah.
between two pretty iconic figures from Hindu mythology. We're talking the warrior Prince Arjuna and his charioteer, who also happens to be Lord Krishna.
Oh, wow.
And get this, it all takes place right before this massive battle is about to erupt.
Hold on. A philosophical debate on a battlefield.
Yeah.
Talking about pressure. What are they even discussing amidst all that chaos?
Well, you see, Arjuna's facing this profound moral dilemma. He sees his own family and friends lined up on the other side, the opposing side, and he's suddenly gripped by doubt, despair, the weight of it all. He starts questioning everything: the point of fighting, the meaning of duty, the nature of life and death. Big questions. And it's in this moment of crisis that Krishna steps in, not just as a charioteer, but as a spiritual guide.
So it's like an existential crisis meets ancient wisdom, kind of.
Exactly. And what unfolds is this deep exploration of some of life's biggest questions. The nature of the self, the concept of dharma, the path to liberation, the power of selfless action. These are like universal themes. They resonate with people no matter what their background is, what they believe.
So even though it's rooted in Hinduism, you don't need to be a Hindu scholar to appreciate its wisdom.
Not at all. The Bhagavad Gita speaks to the human condition, the struggles we all face, making difficult choices, dealing with doubt and fear, finding our place in this complex world. It's like a roadmap for navigating the inner battlefield of our own minds.
Wow, that's really intriguing. I have to admit, though, I'm a little intimidated by the sheer scope of it. It's pretty dense text, right? Where do you even begin with something like that?
That's where your podcast comes in.
Ah, okay.
The beauty of taking it chapter by chapter is that you can unpack these complex ideas slowly, methodically. And the Gita itself, well, it's structured in a way that makes it accessible. Each of the 18 chapters, they focus on a specific theme, a specific teaching.
So it's like a course in self-discovery with 18 modules.
Yeah, you could say that. And as you go through each chapter, you'll start to see the connections, the layers of meaning. You'll encounter stories, metaphors, even, moments of humor
Oh, really?
that bring these ancient teachings to life.
This is making me rethink how I approach the Gita. It's not just an ancient text. It's like a living conversation across millennia. So for someone starting their podcast journey with the Bhagavad Gita, what's the one thing you'd say is key to keep in mind?
I'd say remember that the Gita is an invitation to explore, to question, and to reflect. It's not about, blindly accepting dogma. It's about engaging in dialogue with yourself and with the text. And be prepared to be surprised, because the Bhagavad Gita has a way of challenging our assumptions and offering these unexpected insights.
That's great advice. So we've established that the Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue, takes place on a battlefield. It covers some pretty profound topics, and it's accessible even if you're not, a religious scholar. Now, before we dive into specifics, I think it's important to understand the context here. This text is part of a much larger epic, the Mahabharata, right?
Right, that's right. Think of the Mahabharata as this vast, intricate tapestry. It's woven with stories of, kings and queens, heroes and villains, gods and demons. It's a tale of family feuds, political intrigue, and ultimately a war that threatens to destroy, well, an entire civilization.
Wow. And the Bhagavad Gita is like a single, intensely focused scene within that larger drama.
Precisely. It's the moment when Arjuna, the protagonist of the Mahabharata, finds himself on the brink of battle. He's facing this moral crisis that kind of mirrors the larger conflict unfolding around him.
It sounds almost Shakespearean in its intensity. No wonder it's captivated readers for centuries.
Absolutely. And by understanding the context of the Mahabharata, you gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities, the nuances of the Bhagavad Gita. It adds another layer of meaning to that dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna.
So as we embark on this journey through the Bhagavad Gita, chapter by chapter, we're also going to be exploring the world of the Mahabharata, uncovering the rich tapestry of stories and characters that surround this epic dialogue.
Each week, we'll delve deeper into a new chapter, unpacking its insights, exploring how they can be applied to our own lives. just as you'll be doing on your podcast.
That's really exciting. I can't wait to see where this journey takes us.
And remember, the Gita isn't just about ancient wisdom, it's about timeless truths that resonate with us today.
So if you're starting a podcast on the Bhagavad Gita, be prepared for a journey of self-discovery and transformation. And most importantly, enjoy the ride. Now, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the structure of the Gita itself. What can you tell us about the 18 chapters and how they're organized?
Well, the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, it's like a carefully crafted symphony.
Yeah.
Each movement building upon the previous one. They flow naturally, starting with Arjuna's initial despair, his questions, and moving to Krishna's profound teachings on a wide range of topics.
Okay, so it's not just 18 random chapters thrown together. There's an actual structure to it.
Absolutely. You could say it's like a spiral staircase.
A spiral staircase.
Yeah, where you revisit certain themes, but at different levels of understanding as you kind of ascend.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So if I'm planning my podcast episodes, I should follow the order of the chapters.
Yeah, that's the most natural approach, I think, especially for someone who's new to the text. It allows the listener to follow Arjuna's journey of transformation, step by step.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned earlier that the Gita covers some pretty profound topics, things like dharma and selfless action. Can you give us a little preview of what those concepts are all about?
Sure, dharma is a central theme, and it's often, well, I think it's often mistranslated as simply duty, but it's much more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It's about understanding your unique place in the universe, your purpose, and acting in alignment with your true nature.
So it's not about blindly following rules, but rather about finding your own path, living authentically.
Exactly. And the Gita suggests that by fulfilling our dharma, well, we actually contribute to the harmony and well-being of the world around us.
Wow,
It's about aligning our actions with a greater purpose.
that's a powerful concept. And what about this idea of selfless action? It sounds a bit paradoxical. How can you act without any desire for the outcome?
Well, that's one of the most challenging but rewarding teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. The idea is that when we act with attachment to the results, well, we create suffering for ourselves. We become bound by our desires, our fears. But when we act from a place of pure intention, simply doing what needs to be done without ego or expectation, we experience this profound sense of freedom and peace.
So it's about letting go of the need to control everything and trusting in the process.
Precisely. And the Gita suggests that this kind of selfless action, well, it's actually the most effective way to create positive change in the world. It's about acting from a place of love, compassion, and service without getting caught up in the ego's need for recognition or reward.
That's really challenging, but also incredibly inspiring. It makes you think about your own motivations, how often you're driven by ego rather than a genuine desire to serve.
Well, we all struggle with that. The Gita isn't about achieving perfection overnight. It's about gradually shifting our perspective, aligning our actions with our highest values.
I'm starting to see why people say the Bhagavad Gita is a lifelong study. There's so much depth to unpack to apply to your own life.
Absolutely. And as you go through each chapter on your podcast, encourage your listeners to reflect on these teachings. Ask themselves, how can I apply this to my own life? What does it mean for me to act with selfless intention? How can I find my dharma and live a more meaningful life?
I love that. It's not just about passively absorbing information, it's about engaging in a dialogue with the text and with yourself. Now, I know you've studied the Bhagavad Gita extensively. What for you is the most surprising, maybe even unexpected insight you've gained from it?
That's a great question. I think what surprised me most was the emphasis on the importance of balance. The Gita doesn't advocate for extremes. It's not about renouncing the world or becoming an ascetic. It's about finding like a middle path, a way to engage with the world fully and joyfully, while also cultivating inner peace, detachment.
So it's not about escaping reality, but transforming the way we experience it.
Exactly. And that transformation happens through the cultivation of wisdom, self-awareness, and this deep connection to something greater than ourselves.
It sounds like the Bhagavad Gita offers this path to living a more fulfilling and meaningful life, even amidst all the challenges and complexities of the modern world.
That's the beauty of it. It's a timeless guide to navigating the human experience, and it's as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
As you embark on your podcast journey, remember that you're not just sharing information, you're offering your listeners this gateway to self-discovery and transformation.
Wow.
And that's a truly powerful gift.
Another beautiful way to put it.
Mm.
Okay, so we've talked about the structure, the themes, even some of the surprising insights we can gain from the Bhagavad Gita. But I'm curious about the actual language, the style of the text itself. Is it difficult to understand for a modern reader?
That's a common concern, but the Bhagavad Gita is, it's surprisingly accessible even in translation. It's written in the form of poetry, which adds this layer of beauty and depth to the teachings. And the language, well, it's very evocative. It uses vivid imagery and metaphors to convey complex ideas.
So it's not dry and academic. It's actually engaging, even poetic.
Exactly. And the dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna, it feels very real, very relatable. They're not just, spouting philosophical concepts.
Right.
They're grappling with real-life dilemmas, emotions.
That makes sense.
Right.
And I imagine that the poetic language also helps to make the teachings more memorable.
Absolutely. The verses of the Bhagavad Gita, they have a way of staying with you long after you've read them. They offer a source of comfort, inspiration, and guidance in moments of doubt or difficulty. Think of it as a conversation with a wise friend, offering this timeless wisdom in a language that speaks to the heart as well as the mind.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this overview, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's about to embark on their own deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita?
I'd say approach it with an open mind and a willingness to be challenged. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to wrestle with the ideas, and to, allow the teachings to transform you. Remember that the Gita is not a destination. It's a journey. Enjoy the process of discovery and allow yourself to be surprised by the wisdom that unfolds along the way.
That's wonderful advice. And to our listeners who are starting their own Bhagavad Gita podcast, remember to be patient with yourself and with the text. It takes time to absorb these profound teachings and to integrate them into your life. Don't be afraid to experiment with different approaches to sharing the Gita, whether it's through storytelling, analysis, or personal reflections. And most importantly, have fun.
Yes, have fun.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation. I feel much more prepared to tackle this project. For our listeners who are ready to dive into the Bhagavad Gita, remember to check out the resources we mentioned, find a translation that speaks to you, and most importantly, approach the text with an open heart and a curious mind.
And don't forget to enjoy the journey. The Bhagavad Gita is a gift, and it's meant to be savored.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah.
I'm excited to continue exploring the Bhagavad Gita, chapter by chapter, on our podcast.
I'm certain you will inspire your listeners as you embark on this journey.
To our listeners, we'll see you next week for our deep dive into chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. Until then, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.